Chapter 10. The cultivation methods of Taoism emphasize the most on the foundation. Although the Xiantian skill, a secret manual of Chuanjin sect, did not have any moves in actual combat, it could make Chu Xiu's foundation extremely solid, and even make up for his poor foundation when he was young. The extraordinary meridians flowed by themselves, and the 8 meridians were all opened. A trace of true qi from the Xiantian skill wandered in Chu Xiu's meridians. High-grade true qi was indeed different. Chu Xiu could clearly feel the true qi wandering in his body and strengthening it. But Chu Xiu didn't feel anything when he practiced the vast sea cultivation method of the Chu family before. He could only feel a faint heat flow with his true qi, which was very vague. After practicing for a whole night, Chu Xiu directly sat cross-legged on the bed and fell asleep. When he woke up the next day, he didn't feel the slightest discomfort. Taoist martial arts are just and gentle. The more I practice, the more energy I will have. This is far better than other martial arts. Chu Xiu pushed the door open. There were more than 10 thick wooden stakes erected in the yard. Last night, Gao Bei had already brought some people to get these things. He picked up his dagger and flicked it. The dagger, which was emitting a sharp qi, suddenly issued a light sound. Martial arts had different levels. Naturally, weapons also had different levels. In Jianghu, weapons were roughly divided into 9 levels, just like martial arts. The first 3 were ordinary weapons, the middle 3 were precious weapons, and the last 3 were divine weapons. Above the divine weapons, there were the legendary peerless divine weapons. Ordinary weapons in the hands of ordinary martial artists were ordinary weapons made by ordinary blacksmiths. Only those weapons made by master blacksmiths or swordsmiths with a certain reputation in Jianghu were precious weapons with their own names. The dagger in Chu Xiu's hand was made from refined or produced in the Nanshan mining area of the Chu family. Its grade should be around the 2nd level. Among ordinary weapons, it could be regarded as a relatively sharp one. Hiding the dagger in his sleeve, Chu Xiu didn't use his true qi. He practiced the Azure Dragon in the sleeve 1 slash at a time. No matter how simple or ordinary a move was, if you persisted in practicing it 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, or even 100,000 times, it would become extraordinary, not to mention the Azure Dragon in the sleeve, which was not a simple martial art. While practicing, Chu Xiu was also visualizing the scene of the Azure Dragon going out to sea in his mind. His current dagger only had the shape of a dagger, but not the intent of a dagger. When Chu Xiu could cut out the dagger intent, his Azure Dragon in the sleeve would be really entered. Chu Xiu spent the whole day practicing the knife. He didn't know how many times he had chopped. Anyway, as long as his arm couldn't stand it anymore, he would start to practice the Xiantian skill to nourish his qi, and then practice again. Now Chu Xiu had no talent, and his comprehension was unknown. He couldn't grab the opportunity, so he could only work on the aspect of perseverance. In the evening, Gao Bei came to deliver food to Chu Xiu. He hesitated for a moment and said, "Young master, I heard a news. Didn't the head of the family hand over the caravan to the Yin kingdom to you? But the stewards and leaders of the caravan are the people of the 2nd madam. They said that when the caravan comes back, they will give you a show of strength." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "They spread this matter so blatantly?" Gao Bei said, "It's not blatant. The news was spread by a maid of the 2nd madam. And that maid is also the concubine of the 3rd young master." A sneer appeared on Chu Xiu's face. This mother and son really didn't put him in their eyes. Perhaps in their plan, even if he knew that the stewards and leaders of the caravan were their people, he couldn't do anything about it. Unfortunately, this mother and son still underestimated the ruthlessness of Chu Xiu. Those who didn't listen to him were no different from dead people. "Gao Bei, follow me out of the city tomorrow morning. We will go to Shangmeng Mountain and find the bandit leader, Ma Kuo, that you invited last time." Chu Xiu said. Gao Bei heard this and immediately shivered. Go to that place again? The scene of those bandits killing people last time had left a lot of psychological trauma in Gao Bei. Chu Xiu glanced at him and said, "What are you afraid of? Bandits are also people and they won't eat people. Moreover, you have already been there last time. Why are you still so afraid now?" Gao Bei heard this and revealed a trace of a bitter smile. "Bandits may not eat people, but they will kill people. The next morning, Gao Bei prepared the horses and set off with Chu Xiu to Shangmeng Mountain. The Shangmeng Mountain was actually not far from Tongzhou Prefecture. The last time Chu Xiu and the others walked for a few days, it was because there were too many people, and they had to drive a carriage, so they couldn't travel fast on the mountain roads. Now only Chu Xiu and Gao Bei rode fast horses, and it only took them a little more than a day to arrive. The Chu clan didn't suspect anything because in the past, Chu Xiu also often went out to play. In the Chu clan, other than Chu Xiu, the eldest Chu clan Chu Kai and the third Chu clan Chu Xing took care of the Tongzhou Prefecture's business, while the fourth prince Chu Shang stayed in the clan to practice martial arts and build a foundation. Only Chu Xiu had nothing to do. When he got bored of playing in the Tongzhou Prefecture, he would go out for a few days. In any case, as long as he didn't cause any trouble, the Chu clan couldn't be bothered to care about him. Gao Bei had been to Shangmeng Mountain once, so his memory was pretty good. After turning left and right in the old forest, he soon found the stronghold of the bandit leader, Ma Kuo. It was a small stronghold completely made of wood, and looked very simple. As soon as they arrived at the entrance of the stronghold, two small bandits jumped out with bows and arrows in their hands. They pointed at Chu Xiu and shouted, "Who are you?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Don't be nervous. I'm an old friend of your chief. I'm here to discuss business with him." At this moment, one of the lackeys finally recognized Chu Xiu and said with sudden realization, "I remember now. Aren't you that rich young master who was robbed and killed by third brother Lian last time? Wait a moment, I'll go report to the stronghold master." After a while, Ma Kuo came out with his men, but he didn't bring his heavy sword. Seeing Chu Xiu, Ma Kuo laughed and said, "Young man from the Chu clan, your Chu clan's oars are really good. The strongest weapon forged from them can reach the third transformation. What good business do you have this time?" Chu Xiu's eyes narrowed when he heard that. His previous guess was right. Ma Kuo should be one of the bandits. The quality of the Chu clan's oars was good, but even with the best oars from the Chu clan, they couldn't forge a weapon of the third transformation. A weapon of the second transformation was already the limit. A person who could forge a weapon of the third transformation with oars of this level could no longer be called a blacksmith. He should be called a blacksmith or a blacksmith. A bandit force with only a few dozen people actually had such a refiner. Just thinking about it made one feel strange. Chu Xiu bowed to Ma Kuo and said, "Chief Ma, I'm Chu Xiu. I do have a business to discuss with you, and it's a big one." Ma Kuo's expression turned serious as well. "Our camp is simple and crude. Young Master Chu, please come in and discuss." The last time Ma Kuo looked at Chu Xiu, there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. However, he could feel that this seemingly ordinary young man was not as simple as he seemed. How could someone who could injure third brother Lian, who was quite famous in the Shangmeng Mountain, and still talk business with them without batting an eyelid? Therefore, when Ma Kuo heard that Chu Xiu wanted to discuss business with him, he immediately changed his attitude. Ma Kuo was not being modest when he said that his stronghold was simple. The small stronghold didn't even have a decent house. The so-called meeting hall was just a random building made of wood. Chu Xiu didn't mind. He just said to Ma Kuo, "Chief Ma, the business I want to discuss with you is a little big. Can you ask your men to leave for a while?" Ma Kuo said calmly, "There's no need for that. These are my brothers who have been through life and death with me. There's nothing to hide." Looking at Ma Kuo, Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Actually, I want to discuss this with the person behind you. I hope you can introduce me to him." Ma Kuo's expression changed when he heard this, but he quickly laughed and said, "The person behind me? Other than my brothers, who else do I have?" Chu Xiu said slowly, "Chief Ma, you don't have to hide it from me. I know you are not a bandit." Ma Kuo put away the smile on his face and put his hand behind the chair. He quietly grabbed the heavy sword and said, "What a joke. If I don't look like a bandit, what else can I be?" Chu Xiu looked straight into Ma Kuo's eyes and said in a low voice, "You are bandits. The remnants of the 36 northern bandits." As soon as Chu Xiu said this, not only Ma Kuo, but all the bandits' expressions changed. Ma Kuo raised the heavy sword in his hand, and was about to slash at Chu Xiu. However, before he could slash with the heavy sword, Chu Xiu's knife was faster than him. A silver light flashed, and in the blink of an eye, it was already in front of Ma Kuo. An inch longer, an inch stronger, and an inch shorter, an inch more dangerous. At such a close distance, Ma Kuo couldn't even defend himself with his sword. He kicked the chair behind him and wanted to retreat, but Chu Xiu's knife was already on his neck. Feeling the cold blade on his neck, Ma Kuo didn't dare to move. The other bandits cursed and pulled out their weapons to point at Chu Xiu and Gao Bei. Gao Bei was so scared that he almost wet his pants. Chu Xiu said expressionlessly, "Chief Ma, calm down. I mean you no harm. If I wanted to use your identity, I could have just told the Northern Yan Imperial Court. Even if Wei County is not under the jurisdiction of the Northern Yan Imperial Court, a word from the Northern Yan Imperial Court will be enough to wipe out the local forces in Wei County. I will also be rewarded handsomely." Chapter 11. With a knife on his neck, Ma Kuo had no choice but to calm down. He waved his hand and asked the others to put down their weapons. He looked straight at Chu Xiu and said, "Tell me, how did you know about us?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "I guessed it. Master Ma's kung fu is pretty good. I can tell that you're not from an unorthodox background. And judging from your behavior, although you look like bandits, you're very obedient. You don't have the sloppiness of ordinary bandits. Moreover, Stronghold Master Ma mentioned the two words Chilean last time. This makes people even more suspicious. Other than the Chilean Iron Cavalry of the 36 bandits of the Northern Lands, bandits and Chilean together, I really can't think of anyone else." Ma Kuo smiled bitterly and said, "Damn it, I didn't keep my mouth shut." In fact, although Chu Xiu said that he had relied on these detailed observations, he was actually able to confirm the identity of the other party, because the original plot mentioned information about the 36 northern bandits. Small fights were called bandits, but when they were developed to the extreme, they would become great bandits who would plunder the world. There were 3 great powers in the world: Northern Yan, Eastern Qi, and Western Chu. Their strength was similar now, but a few decades ago, Northern Yan was extremely weak. It was attacked by Eastern Qi and Western Chu together. It couldn't even manage its external affairs, let alone its internal affairs. In troubled times, bandits rose up. In the Northern Yan Kingdom, groups of bandits quickly grew and became the 36 Northern Bandits. They were so powerful that they even dared to rob the Northern Yan Imperial Court and the major sects in the Jianghu. But later, Northern Yan rose again. It was said that the 36 Northern Bandits also offended the Northern Yan martial arts sect, the Northern Snowfall City. They were defeated by the Northern Yan Imperial Court and the Northern Snowfall City. The leaders of the 36 Northern Yan were either killed or crippled. They were no longer a threat. In the original plot, there was news that the 36 Northern Bandits had appeared in Wei County. It was because of this news that Chu Xiu could confirm Ma Kuo's identity. Chu Xiu removed his saber and said calmly, "I know your background, Chief Ma, but I didn't announce it. Chief Ma should know my sincerity now, right?" Ma Kuo rubbed his neck and mumbled, "Your blade is indeed fast, but if the distance was any further, I wouldn't have given you the chance to get close to me." Ma Kuo put on a brave front and asked, "What do you want to trade with my boss? You can tell me first." Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "I know the whereabouts of the leader of the Chilean Iron Cavalry of the 36 Great Bandits, red-faced Heavenly King Penghu. I wonder if this information is enough for us to trade?" Ma Kuo was shocked and shouted, "Do you really know where the first master is? You're not lying to me." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Bring me to see the person behind you. He will naturally be able to tell whether what I said is true or false. Moreover, I won't dare to lie when I get there." Ma Kuo thought for a while and said, "All right then, come with me. My boss is at the Northern Mang Mountain. It will take a few days to get there." The Northern Mang Mountain was originally just a mountain range, but the mountain range in the middle was slightly smaller. The Tong State Prefecture was located in the middle, so the locals in Wei County called it the Northern Mang Mountain and the Southern Mang Mountain. Chu Xiu was currently at the Southern Mang Mountain, which led to the Southern Mountain mining area. The Northern Mang Mountain was located in the north of the Tong State Prefecture, which led to the Yan Kingdom. Ma Kuo brought Chu Xiu all the way to the Northern Mang Mountain. It took them 5 days to reach the northern Mang Mountain by taking shortcuts. In the northern Mang Mountain, a sizable stronghold appeared in front of Chu Xiu. There were tall watchtowers around it, and it looked much more formal than Ma Kuo's stronghold. Ma Kuo explained, "After we came to Wei County, my boss built a stronghold here. But just in case, we have a small group of people scattered outside, just like my stronghold." Ma Kuo whistled a few strange sounds, and immediately a few bandits came to him. They cupped their hands and said to Ma Kuo, "Boss Ma, how come you have time to come back today? Who is this guy?" Ma Kuo said, "An acquaintance. I will bring him to see the boss first." The bandits nodded and left. Obviously, Ma Kuo had enough prestige here that he was worth the trust of these bandits. After arranging a meeting room for Chu Xiu, Ma Kuo left immediately. Obviously, he was going to see the person behind him. Chu Xiu was not in a hurry. He quietly drank his tea. After a while, Ma Kuo walked in with a tall and muscular man who was also in his 30s. He had a leopard's head and a pair of round eyes. This man was much stronger than Chu Xiu. He had reached the blood condensation realm. And from what Chu Xiu could see, he had even reached the peak of the blood condensation realm. He was only one step away from the Xiantian realm. The man looked at Chu Xiu, and a fierce aura came from him. He said in a deep voice, "So you are the one who said you know where the boss is?" Ma Kuo quickly said, "This is Boss Han Bao. He used to be one of the boss's personal guards." Chu Xiu stood up and cupped his hands. "Yes, I am. Chu Xiu greets you, Boss Han." Han Bao waved his hand and snorted. "Don't talk nonsense. Tell me what you want. Of course, don't even think about asking for too much. Otherwise, I can pry the boss's information out of your mouth." Chu Xiu shook his head. "Boss Han, you don't need to scare me. Actually, I didn't plan to trade this information with you. Now, I will tell you as a gift. As far as I know, after the boss was injured by the Northern Yan Imperial Court, Peng, who has been hiding in the barren mountains and forests of Liaodong County in the north. He is recovering his strength and wants to make a comeback." Chu Xiu did not lie to them. In the future, this scarlet-faced heavenly king Peng, who had indeed caused some trouble for the Northern Yan Imperial Court after he had recovered his strength. Unfortunately, it was only a small problem, and was easily resolved by the Northern Yan Imperial Court. Han Bao was puzzled. "You are not lying to me?" There were people from the northern floating snow city who participated in the extermination of the 36 bandits. The northern floating snow city is in the north. Why would the boss continue to stay in the north? Chu Xiu said indifferently. The barren mountains and forests of Liaodong are uninhabited. Neither the northern floating snow city, nor the northern Yan Imperial Court will enter it. Only some herb gatherers enter occasionally. Boss Peng, who only wants to recover his strength, not to expand his power. This place is perfect for him. Moreover, you all should have heard of the saying that it is dark under the lamp. Even your own people did not expect that Peng who would stay in the north, let alone the Imperial Court and the northern floating snow city. If Boss Han doesn't believe me, you can send someone to Liaodong County to take a look. There must be a secret signal that Boss Peng who left for you. From here to Liaodong County on horseback, it will take about a month. Han Bao's expression softened after hearing this. He cupped his fists at Chu Xiu and said, "If we can really find the boss, I, Han Bao, will owe you a favor. Tell me, what do you want?" Chu Xiu didn't say what he wanted. He asked instead, "After we find Boss Peng who, what are you going to do?" Han Bao said matter-of-factly, "Of course I'm going to bring the people from the stronghold to seek refuge with the boss." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "That's not right. Boss Han, the head Peng who is currently recuperating. There's no point in seeking refuge with him. Instead, your actions will increase the risk of exposing the head Peng who. So I can guarantee that after the people you send meet the head Peng who will definitely let you stay in Wei Prefecture for the time being, and listen to his orders. So what you need to do now, Boss Han, is to accumulate money and cultivation resources in Wei County to prepare for the future rise of the boss." Han Bao's eyes flickered. He was a boorish man. When he followed Peng Hu, he was just an ordinary guard, loyal and courageous. However, he wasn't an idiot. Although Chu Xiu's words sounded nice, He wouldn't just believe the words of an outsider like Chu Xiu. Han Bao asked directly, Chu Xiu brat, why are you so considerate of me? Although your Chu clan only has a bit of influence in Tong province, you are still a local tyrant. Don't tell me you want to join our northern 36 bandits? Chu Xiu said in a low voice. What I want is very simple. I don't want to make a deal with you, Boss Han. I want to cooperate, a long-term cooperation. Cooperation? What kind of cooperation? Chu Xiu pointed at the Shangmeng mountain outside and said, Wei County is a lawless area. The Northern Yan rule over Wei County in name only, so there are bandits running rampant in Wei County. Even in this Shangmeng mountain, there are probably dozens of groups of bandits. However, these bandits have gone too far. They rob and kill, showing no mercy to the traveling merchants. Han Bao sneered. We are bandits and they are merchants. Why should we show mercy to them? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, But it is precisely because of this that the merchants are afraid of the bandits that they don't take the small paths in Shangmeng Mountain. Instead, they take the main road. Although it is time-consuming, it is safe. Or they arrange for a large number of guards to accompany them so that the bandits can't make a move. As more and more of these situations occur, the business of bandits in Shangmeng Mountain will decrease. Han Bao frowned. Even the northern 36 bandits of such a large scale had people specially assigned to come up with plans and strategies. He really hadn't considered these things before. Han Bao couldn't help but ask, Then what should we do? Chu Xiu said in a low voice. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. If there are no rules, then we will make them. The traveling merchants can enter and leave Shangmeng Mountain as they wish, but they have to pay a portion of the money. After Boss Han receives the money, you can take the initiative to escort the merchants out of Shangmeng Mountain. Anyone who has any designs on the merchants will be enemies with Boss Han. When the rules are set, and Boss Han's reputation spreads, the traveling merchants will take the initiative to pay you. Han Bao thought for a while and said, Then wouldn't I be enemies with all the bandits in Shangmeng Mountain? Chu Xiu said indifferently, It is enough for the entire Shangmeng Mountain to have one voice. Boss Han, don't you have the confidence to deal with those mobs? Han Bao laughed sinisterly and said, Of course I do. If it weren't for my injuries, I would have dealt with that bunch of trash long ago. Chu Xiu looked at Han Bao in surprise. It seemed like this person's peak strength was at the innate realm. He had misjudged him. Chapter 12. Han Bao was a boorish man, but he was no idiot. He could naturally tell if Chu Xiu's plan was good or bad. In the past, among the 36 bandits of the northern lands, there were some who specialized in giving them advice and suggestions. There were even a few leaders of the 36 bandits of the northern lands who were scheming and skilled in calculation. If Ma Kuo hadn't told him about Chu Xiu's identity, Han Bao would have wanted to recruit Chu Xiu into their stronghold. Although Chu Xiu's strength wasn't worth mentioning, based on what he had said today, this Chu Xiu had the right to negotiate with Han Bao. By the way, Chu Xiu kid, you gave me such an idea. I still don't know what you want. Chu Xiu said in a low voice. It's simple. I also have a caravan in the Chu family, and I hope that my caravan can enter and leave Shangmeng Mountain without any obstructions. Also, since I'm cooperating with you, I hope that when I need you to help me kill someone, Boss Han, I hope that you can help me. A faint smile appeared on Han Bao's slightly ferocious face as he said, The first condition is not a problem. Although we, the 36 bandits of the northern region, are bandits by nature, we also pay attention to Jianghu morality. Since you have given me such a good idea, I will naturally agree to your conditions. But for the second condition, are you planning to use me, Han Bao, as your hired thug? Just this piece of information is not enough. Chu Xiu said calmly. Only cooperation can be achieved through reciprocity. Of course, I can give you more than this, Boss Han. My Chu family is the local tyrant of Tongzhou Prefecture, and we also have an business in Tongzhou Prefecture. Most of the caravans coming and going from Tongzhou Prefecture have to stay in our inn. I can find out all their information, including the route they are going to take, the things they are carrying, and so on. Han Bao's eyes lit up. If he had this information, his stronghold would not be left empty-handed. Right at that moment, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Oh right, in a few days I'll send you news about the Chu clan's caravan. You'll be able to rob and kill them. Consider it my gift to Boss Han." Han Bao frowned. "You want me to rob your Chu clan's caravan? What does that mean?" A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. "That's the caravan of the Chu clan, not my caravan." Han Bao and Ma Kuo looked at each other and felt a chill run down their spines. In terms of viciousness, these bandits couldn't compare to these so-called aristocratic family disciples. They were so vicious to their own people, let alone to others. After Boss Han agreed to Chu Xiu's terms of cooperation, Chu Xiu agreed to contact the other party before returning to Tongzhou Prefecture. Gao Bei was also sent back by Ma Kuo's men. Gao Bei almost cried when he saw Chu Xiu again. Gao Bei had been dealing with these bandits for a long time. He was afraid that if he angered the other party, he would be killed. Seeing Gao Bei like this, Chu Xiu couldn't help but shake his head. Although Gao Bei was cautious and conscientious, he was too timid. After entering the city, Chu Xiu went straight to the Chu clan. At this time, there was a group of people in front of the Chu clan's gate, busy loading boxes of goods onto carts. It seemed like they were about to set off. Seeing this scene, Chu Xiu's expression immediately turned gloomy. Recently, there were no caravans coming in and out of the Chu clan. There was only one caravan heading to the Yan kingdom, so it was obvious who these people were. But the problem was that he was in charge of this caravan. Now that he wasn't around, these people were ready to set off. It was just as Gao Bei said. The people in this caravan probably didn't intend to listen to him from the beginning. "Who allowed you to leave?" Chu Xiu asked with a gloomy expression. A 40-year-old caravan steward jogged over with a humble smile on his face. He greeted Chu Xiu and said, "I am Zhang Quan, the steward of this caravan." "Greetings, second young master." This Zhang Quan's attitude couldn't be considered arrogant. In fact, it was a little servile. However, Chu Xiu still asked coldly, "Who is in charge of this caravan now?" Zhang Quan smiled and said, "Of course it is under second young master." Chu Xiu looked straight at Zhang Quan and said coldly, "Since it is under my control, then who allowed you to load the goods and set off? How much money did you sell for the last batch of goods? What did you bring back? What are you planning to transport this time? Have you ever discussed these with me?" Zhang Quan lowered his head and put on a humble attitude. "Second young master, please forgive me." But at that time, second young master wasn't in the manor, and I couldn't find anyone to discuss it with. So I went to inform the patriarch, and only left after he agreed. Time waits for no man. If I delay the caravan, then I will delay the money. But second young master, you can rest assured. I have been in charge of this caravan for so many years, and I have never had a single mishap. Of course, if you are really dissatisfied, then when I return, I will be at second young master's disposal. At this time, there were already many members of the Chu clan gathered at the entrance of the Chu residence. All of them looked at Chu Xiu with mocking eyes. Even an idiot could see that although this Zhang Quan's attitude was extremely low profile and humble, it was obvious that he didn't give Chu Xiu any face. He also didn't give him the chance to interfere with the caravan. However, compared to the arrogant butler Lu, although this Zhang Quan was only a manager of the caravan, he had traveled extensively and was very tactful. He was a wily old fox who wouldn't listen to anything. Now, in front of so many people, he had already lowered his attitude to such an extent. Moreover, he even talked about the interests of Chu Zongguang and the entire caravan. What could Chu Xiu do to him? Beat him up for no reason? He wasn't like Butler Lu, who would be caught by Chu Xiu just because he said something wrong. Moreover, even if Chu Xiu really did beat him up for no reason, there would be people who would stop him in public. Moreover, Chu Xiu might even lose his position as the manager of the caravan because of this matter. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He walked over and patted Zhang Quan's shoulder. He said in a low voice, "Manager Zhang, right? Very good, you have done very well. I just hope you won't regret it." A trace of pride flashed in Zhang Quan's eyes. He smiled humbly and said, "Thank you for your praise, second young master. This lowly one will never regret working for the Chu clan." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "It's good that you won't regret it. Manager Zhang, I wish you a safe journey." Zhang Quan frowned. Why did the words "have a good journey" sound so awkward? However, he didn't care too much about it. He was already on the third young master's side. He was destined to be different from this unfavored second young master. If he offended him, then so be it. It wasn't a big deal. The rest of the Chu clan members also secretly laughed and shook their heads. This Chu Xiu was still too inexperienced. He was left speechless by a wily old fox like Zhang Quan. After the crowd dispersed, Chu Xiu brought Gao Bei back to his courtyard with a gloomy face. Gao Bei was just about to say something, but Chu Xiu's gloomy face instantly returned to normal. He asked Gao Bei, "Can you find out the route of the caravan?" Gao Bei was taken aback for a moment, then nodded and said, "Of course I can. Every time the caravan leaves, it must be recorded in the Chu clan. That way, we can estimate where the caravan will be at each time. If they come back late, we will have to look for them. This is not a secret, it's easy to find them." Chu Xiu took out a piece of paper and wrote a letter. He drew a strange mark on it, then handed it to Gao Bei and said, "Go get the route map of the caravan and place it in a pile of rocks 3 li north of the city." Although Gao Bei was an honest man, he was not stupid. He could roughly guess what Chu Xiu wanted to do, and he couldn't help but shiver. However, he was already on Chu Xiu's side. Whatever Chu Xiu asked him to do, he could only do it. Otherwise, he could already feel the consequences from Chu Xiu's ruthless way of doing things. At this time, Zhang Quan's caravan had already left the city. One of the stewards came up to Zhang Quan and said with a frown, "Old Zhang, you've offended the second young master today. I've heard how the second young master treated Butler Lu during the clan meeting. Ever since the second young master returned from the Nanshan mining area, he has become different from the previous second young master." Zhang Quan said nonchalantly, "Of course I know that, but don't forget how many benefits we've received from the third young master over the years, including that time when we were deceived and bought a pile of fake medicine. That matter was covered up by the third young master and the second madam. We are all servants of the Chu clan, but it's still uncertain who the Chu clan will belong to in the future. Since we've already chosen a side, we shouldn't be half-hearted. If anything happens, the second madam and the third young master will take care of it for us. Just like today, there's nothing wrong with my attitude. Would Chu Xiu dare to kill me? The Chu clan is a great clan, and since it's a great clan, it has to follow the rules. As long as we don't break the rules, Chu Xiu won't be able to touch us." The steward nodded, but he still felt a little uneasy. Chapter 13. When night fell, Zhang Quan led the caravan straight into the dense forest of Shangmeng Mountain. There were only about 100 people in the Chu clan's caravan, so their ability to fend off the bandits wasn't that great. However, Zhang Quan and the others were veterans in this caravan, and they had a wealth of experience. If they couldn't fend off the bandits, then they could just hide. Shangmeng Mountain was huge, and with their experience, they could easily circle around the bandits and sweep away all traces of their trail, leaving Shangmeng Mountain safely. Even if they were unlucky and were discovered by the bandits, Zhang Quan and the others would decisively leave the goods behind and run. Although the bandits were ruthless and merciless, compared to killing, robbing was far more important. So if they encountered such a situation, the bandits would definitely go for the goods they left behind first, and Zhang Quan and the others would be able to escape easily. It was inevitable for a caravan to run into such situations. As long as they didn't get into trouble often, the Chu clan wouldn't blame them. They would make up for their losses with a few more trips. Zhang Quan looked up at the sky and whispered to the caravan, "Let's go a bit further. There's a fairly large cave up ahead. We'll rest there." Suddenly a loud laugh sounded. "There's no need to go. If you want to rest today, you can rest here." Along with this voice, torches were lit, and the clanging of weapons could be heard. A dense group of bandits appeared in front of them. Zhang Quan's expression immediately changed. What was going on? He had only decided to take this route recently, and there weren't any bandits in the vicinity. Most importantly, even if he was really unlucky enough to encounter bandits, he should have been able to detect a trace of movement. Moreover, these bandits clearly seemed to know the route of their caravan, and deliberately waited for them here. Run! Zhang Quan shouted and urged his horse to turn around and run. The other stewards and members of the caravan did the same. They didn't have time to think too much about it. However, the situation was different from what they had expected. The quality of these bandits was comparable to that of soldiers. Faced with the goods they left behind, the bandits didn't even spare them a glance, and charged straight for them. Moreover, the stronger ones among the bandits targeted the stewards of the caravan, while the ordinary cultivators of the caravan were ignored. Zhang Quan couldn't help but feel anxious as he watched the bandits catch up to the stewards of their caravan and kill them one by one. He gritted his teeth, pulled out a dagger, and stabbed it into the horse's butt. The horse neighed in pain and sped up. However, at this moment, a heavy sword flew over from afar, directly smashing toward Zhang Quan. Although Zhang Quan was the manager of the caravan, he had only practiced some basic martial arts. He had relied on his own methods to manage the caravan all these years, not martial arts. When the heavy sword smashed down, he subconsciously turned around and raised his arms to block, but his arms were directly smashed into pieces. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell from his horse. Behind him, Ma Kuo walked over slowly. He picked up the terrified Zhang Quan and whispered into his ear. Zhang Quan, right? Young Master Chu Xiu asked me to bring you a message. Steward Zhang, have a safe journey. The moment he heard this, Zhang Quan's eyes were filled with shock. He understood everything now. The second young master of the Chu clan had colluded with bandits to rob their caravan. However, Zhang Quan didn't have the time to feel resentful or regretful. Ma Kuo had already pulled out a dagger and stabbed it into Zhang Quan's chest. He twisted it with all his might before throwing Zhang Quan, who was already struggling to breathe, to the ground. Ma Kuo flicked the blood off the dagger and waved to the other bandits. Go, open the goods. Let's see what young Master Chu has prepared for us. The next morning, news came from the Chu clan's manor. The Chu clan's caravan had been robbed. The entire caravan had more than 100 people. Not only had they lost all of their goods, they had also lost more than 20 people. Most importantly, the 3 stewards of the caravan were among the 20 people. None of them managed to escape. The Chu clan had been doing business for many years. The only time they suffered such a great loss was when they weren't familiar with the paths of Shangmeng Mountain. In recent years, something like this had never happened before. In the courtyard of the second madam, Chu Sheng's face was a little gloomy. Mother, do you think this has something to do with Chu Xiu? Steward Zhang and the others had just defended Chu Xiu, and now something happened here. The second madam's expression was also gloomy. I don't know. Logically speaking, Chu Xiu shouldn't have the guts to do something like this. If the master finds out about this, even if he is the master's biological son, the master will cripple him. Besides, even if he has the guts, he doesn't have the power. The bandits of Shangmeng Mountain are arrogant and unruly. Why would they listen to him? Last time, I spent 10,000 taels of silver to hire a small bandit gang. Where did Chu Xiu get so much money? Before we have evidence, we shouldn't spread this matter. Otherwise, the master will be unhappy. Chu Sheng nodded, but at this time he suddenly said, why don't we dig out all of Chu Xiu's subordinates and ask them if they have any clues? The second madam coldly snorted. Chu Xiu has become much more cautious after returning from the southern mountain mining area. After returning to the Chu clan, he sent all of his subordinates to the southern mountain mining area. Now, we can't find them at all. The only one following him is Gao Bei. However, that person is his confidant. Since Chu Xiu keeps him by his side, he won't be afraid of us digging him out. Chu Sheng's face showed a trace of unwillingness. His opponent had always been the eldest son of the Chu clan, Chu Xiu. He didn't expect that Chu Xiu would suddenly appear and cause him such a big loss. The second madam waved her hand and said, all right, don't complain. The master will send you to a meeting later. Say what you should, but don't say what you shouldn't. Chu Sheng nodded, turned around and walked out. The incident with the caravan wasn't a big deal, but it wasn't a small one either. Because such a thing hadn't happened in many years, it alarmed Chu Zongguang. Some of the stewards, as well as Chu Xiu's sons, were called over to listen to the meeting. Inside the meeting hall, Chu Xiu sat there without the slightest expression on his face. Chu Sheng, on the other hand, occasionally glanced at Chu Xiu. No one knew what he was thinking. Several members of the caravan, who had escaped death, still had frightened expressions on their faces. They recounted what happened that night, but unfortunately, there wasn't anything of value. They didn't even know the bandit's name, nor did they see the bandit's face. Those bandits killed everyone they saw, and they only cared about running for their lives. How could they care about such things? Chu Zongguang waved his hand slightly irritably and said, all right, I'll remember this lesson. Next time, be more careful. Disperse, I'm going back to seclusion. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly stood up and said, Father, the caravan is like a group of dragons without a leader. I'm willing to lead the caravan to Shangmeng Mountain again. When these words came out, everyone present was stunned, including Chu Xiu's 3 brothers. Ever since the Chu clan had been established in the Tongzhou prefecture, apart from some open and secret battles with other clans, the number of people who died in the caravans was the second highest. Just like this time, if you were unlucky enough to encounter bandits, whether you could survive or not would depend on your luck. Thus, even if Chu Sheng and the others managed the caravan, they would never follow the caravan. At most, they would be responsible for arranging the caravan's goods and so on. Chu Zongguang frowned and said, Why are you following them? How can you lead a caravan without any experience? Chu Xiu said gravely, The caravan is currently in a state of panic. If they don't have someone with enough authority to lead them, when will they be able to resume their journey? Other matters can be delayed, but our Chu clan's pharmacy cannot be delayed. There are some medicines in the pharmacy that will run out of stock if we don't bring them back soon. As a direct descendant of the Chu clan, I should take the lead and inspire the people. Father, please allow me to do this. Chu Zongguang frowned. He hadn't expected Chu Xiu to be so enlightened. However, after thinking about it, he still said, Then go. Be careful. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and walked out under the puzzled gazes of the others. The other 3 Chu Xiu's brothers didn't pay him any heed. This kind of strenuous, unrewarding, and even dangerous task, they wouldn't do it even if it was given to them for free. The caravan's members were all gathered in a small courtyard. Several dozen of them were dejected, and the Chu clan members who passed by pointed at them. This time they were indeed vexed. They were robbed as soon as they entered the mountain. They didn't keep their things, and many of them died. Some of them even developed a mentality of fear, and didn't dare to travel with the caravan again. Chu Xiu parted the crowd and walked in. The group of people were also listless. Only a few of them stood up and cupped their hands at Chu Xiu. Greetings, second young master. Chu Xiu glanced at the crowd and said, Pack up. The caravan will set off for the Yin Kingdom again. Hearing this, the people immediately became anxious. Someone immediately said, Second young master, we just got into trouble. No matter what, we need to recuperate for a while and think of a countermeasure before we leave. What if we are robbed again after entering the mountain? The other caravans also agreed. They were really scared out of their wits. Chapter 14. It was Chu Xiu who had sent Han Bao to rob the caravan, but Chu Xiu only intended to kill Zhang Quan and the other stewards. He intended to keep the others alive. Otherwise, what would be the point of a caravan if there wasn't a single person left? In truth, not many of them had died, but those who survived seemed to have been scared out of their wits. They didn't dare to move any further. This made Chu Xiu sneer coldly in his heart. That cheap father of his really didn't care about the Chu clan's affairs at all. These servants had already been spoiled to this extent, and yet he didn't care about them at all. Looking at the crowd, Chu Xiu said coldly, Recuperate for a period of time? Think of a countermeasure? What a joke. It's not like you're the ones who died. You didn't even suffer a single injury, so what's there to recuperate for? As for a countermeasure, the bandits of Mt. Meng have been wreaking havoc for decades. Even the Wei Commandery's Northern Yin Imperial Court can't do anything about it. And you want a countermeasure? A bunch of trash. If you're afraid, just say it. Stop finding excuses. The members of the caravan were all furious. However, no matter what, Chu Xiu was still the second young master of the Chu clan. They weren't even stewards, so they didn't dare to challenge Chu Xiu. They could only remain silent with angry expressions on their faces. Chu Xiu sneered. Do you think it's over if you don't say anything? The Chu clan has so many businesses, and the treatment given to the caravans is the best. The other servants only get 1 tael or 2 taels of silver a month, but your caravan gets at least 10 taels of silver a month, and the stewards can even get up to 100 taels of silver. The Chu clan doesn't give you so much money to be the boss here. Even if you're afraid of death and don't want to go, there are plenty of people who want to go. Gao Bei. Chu Xiu shouted. Gao Bei immediately walked out and said, I'm here. Chu Xiu said calmly, Go tell those servants in the Chu clan's odd job office that if they dare to risk their lives, my caravan will dare to take them. The minimum salary is 10 taels of silver a month, and as long as they return safely, I will give them half of our profits as a reward. Chu Xiu then turned his attention to the other members of the caravan and said lightly, As for you guys, it's fine if you don't want to risk your lives in the caravan. Go find Steward Liu and ask him to assign you a new place. Of course, Steward Liu is still lying in bed, so he probably doesn't have time to care about you guys. The expressions of the people in the caravan changed. They didn't expect Chu Xiu to be so ruthless. He actually wanted to kick them out of the caravan. To be honest, of all the businesses the Chu clan had, caravans were treated the best. Furthermore, they hadn't encountered any major dangers in the past few years. This was the only time they had been frightened. Just because they had to give up such a good position this time. Those who had been firm just now immediately began to hesitate. Moreover, compared to when Zhang Quan was in charge of the caravan, the second young master was much more generous. He was actually willing to take out half of the profits as a reward, even though this 5% seemed like a small amount, and it was even less when divided among the 100 or so people. The profits of each caravan were several thousand taels of silver. On average, they would still receive a few taels of silver. This was already quite a lot for them. Right at this moment, the person who had jumped out to question Chu Xiu was the first to change sides. He hurriedly begged, Second young master, I was blinded by greed just now. The Chu clan has treated us well. Please give me a chance, second young master. Chu Xiu didn't know anything about caravans. Now that the stewards were dead, there was no way he could really chase them all out of the caravan. As such, Chu Xiu said calmly, You only have one chance. If you don't grasp it, don't blame me for being ruthless. Those who are willing to stay with the caravan, come with me. Out of the 70 or so members of the caravan, only a dozen or so were truly scared out of their wits. They would rather leave without the benefits of a caravan. As for the others, they obediently followed Chu Xiu to make preparations and set off once more. The rules of the caravan weren't too difficult. It was nothing more than a mutual exchange of goods. They would sell the specialties of Wei Commandery to the Yan Kingdom and make a huge profit. Then they would bring some specialties from the Yan Kingdom back to Wei Commandery. However, even though it was safe to take the main road, it would take too long. They wouldn't even be able to circle around Shangmeng Mountain in a month. If they were to pass through Shangmeng Mountain directly, they would be able to make it back and forth twice in a month. This time, Chu Xiu was leading the caravan. He had already informed Han Bao that Han Bao's subordinates would cooperate with him to put on a show for the Chu clan, as well as the other bandits in Shangmeng Mountain. After entering Shangmeng Mountain, Chu Xiu took another trade route that Zhang Quan and the others had taken before. Along the way, the servants of the caravan were like birds startled by the mere twang of a bow, afraid that there would be more bandits. However, the reality was that whatever one was afraid of would come true. At this moment, a loud laughter suddenly sounded. Come out, boys. Business is here. Kill them, but leave the goods behind. As soon as the words were spoken, over 100 bandits rushed out from the dense forest and surrounded the caravan. At this moment, the people in the caravan were already regretting to death. If they had known earlier, they wouldn't have followed Chu Xiu to court death. In the end, not only did they not get their money, they were about to lose their lives. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly said to Gao Bei, Get the kerosene and prepare to light the fire. Gao Bei nodded and directly opened the carriage that was loaded with goods. He opened a clay jar at the top of the carriage, which emitted a pungent smell. Impressively, it was a jar of kerosene. At this moment, Gao Bei also took out a flint from his bosom, ready to ignite the kerosene at any time. Chu Xiu pointed at the clay jar and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, there is a kerosene jar like this on every carriage. You may kill for money, but the people of my Chu family will not allow themselves to be trampled on by others. At worst, I will burn the goods and then fight to the death with you. Don't even think about getting anything." The people in the caravan looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of surprise in their eyes. Obviously, they didn't expect this second young master to have such a trick up his sleeves. However, what if they encountered a hot-tempered bandit who would rather not have this thing and kill them? Among the bandits, a strong man carrying a machete walked out. Chu Xiu knew this person. He was one of Han Bao's trusted subordinates and had the strength of the body-tempering realm. Chu Xiu didn't know his real name, but the other bandits all called him Feng Yidao, meaning that his machete art was very fast, and he often killed people with a single blade. Feng Yidao pretended not to know Chu Xiu. He sneered and said, "You're still too inexperienced to play this game with me. Do you believe that I would rather not have these things and kill you all?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Why bother? This hero, how about this? You and I have a match. If I lose, you can do whatever you want to me. If I win, everyone will let us leave. How about this?" Feng Yidao laughed and said, "A weak young master wants to fight with me? Since you want to court death, I will fulfill your wish." The other members of the caravan all frowned. They couldn't be blamed for being worried. In the Chu family, this second young master had never been famous for his strength. In the entire Chu family, only the young master was publicly acknowledged to have a good martial talent. He had already reached the blood condensation realm. Chu Xiu dismounted from his horse and took out the short blade in his hand. He cupped his hands towards Feng Yidao and directly attacked him. Chu Xiu specialized in swift machete techniques. That Feng Yidao was also not an ordinary bandit. He came from the Northern Land's 36 bandits. His martial arts inheritance was not inferior to the disciples of sects or aristocratic families. However, he also specialized in swift machetes. But right now, the two of them were acting. Naturally, they couldn't use those kind of swift machete techniques that could kill the enemy in one move. So they were like ordinary martial artists, fighting back and forth. Among the Chu family's servants, there were practically no true martial artists. The majority of them had only learned some superficial martial arts. So in their eyes, the fight between the two sides was very intense. After exchanging a few dozen blows, Feng Yidao purposely went easy. Chu Xiu directly sent the machete in his hand flying. Cupping his hands, he said, "Thanks for letting me win." Feng Yidao's acting was not bad. He revealed a gloomy expression and said, Fine, you guys can leave. I didn't think that a young master like you would have some strength. It was me who underestimated you." Hearing this, the people of the caravan immediately let out a breath of relief and collectively cheered. But at this time Chu Xiu said, "Hero, please wait a moment." Feng Yidao frowned and said, "Brat, what else do you want?" The people of the caravan also didn't understand. Right now, they couldn't wait to get as far away from these bandits as possible. What was the second young master doing here? Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "This one wants to discuss business with Hero." Feng Yidao pointed at himself and said, "Did I hear wrong? You want to discuss business with a bandit like me?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's right, I want to discuss business. My caravan can transport this batch of goods to the Yin Kingdom and sell it for a few thousand taels of silver. But in reality, if this batch of goods were to fall into your hands, with your ability, you would only be able to exchange it for a few hundred taels of silver. This is a difference of 10 times. I am willing to take out 1,000 taels of silver and invite heroes to escort my caravan out of Shangmeng Mountain. In this way, heroes can be considered to have not made this trip in vain. In fact, it is even more than the money you can earn from robbing others." Feng Yidao's eyes instantly lit up. "Brat, your idea is not bad. Interesting, I agree." The people of the caravan all looked at each other. They had traveled Shangmeng Mountain for more than 10 years, but this was the first time they saw such a method. But thinking about it carefully, they really didn't lose too much. Although 1,000 taels of silver was a lot, in the past, they had to hide from the bandits. But now they could directly be escorted out of Shangmang Mountain by these bandits. The time spent was also much shorter. At this moment, everyone seemed to have realized that this second young master seemed to have really changed. He was like a completely different person from the second young master in their impression. Chu Xiu's act was very successful. He had completely established his prestige in the caravan. And Han Bao could also spread this matter to let the other bandits know the feasibility of setting up such a rule. Chapter 15. Chu Xiu's caravan was going to the Yan Kingdom, but in reality, they were only going to a small border town, Qingyuan Town. Because the Wei County was a small country that bordered the Yan Kingdom, Qingyuan Town was only a buffer zone between the two countries. It was only when the Yan Kingdom destroyed the Wei Kingdom that Qingyuan Town was established as a place for trade between the Yan Kingdom and the Wei County. Some of the Yan Kingdom's specialties could be bought here. And Chu Xiu's caravan could also directly sell their goods to the Yan Kingdom's merchants. This time, Chu Xiu's caravan traveled very smoothly. It only took 10 days for them to make a round trip. And this time, many people changed their opinion of Chu Xiu. This second young master wasn't as useless as before. Especially the people from the caravan, they were very respectful towards Chu Xiu. At this time, in a training room in the Chu clan's backyard, a white-haired old housekeeper was reporting to Chu Zongguang about Chu Xiu. This old housekeeper was surnamed Chun. Although he was also a housekeeper of the Chu clan, he was very low-key. Normally, he was only responsible for serving Chu Zongguang. Although he didn't have any real power, he was the oldest person in the Chu clan. Don't look at how Chu Zongguang was in seclusion every day, as if he didn't care about the clan's affairs. But through housekeeper Chun, the Chu clan's matters couldn't be hidden from him. After listening, Chu Zongguang's eyes revealed a trace of astonishment. But soon after, he coldly snorted and said, "This brat is too risky. If he does this, what if the bandits on the other side aren't moved by force or persuasion, and would rather kill him without the goods? Also, if the bandits aren't strong enough to escort them out of the Shangmeng Mountain, wouldn't his silver be wasted?" Housekeeper Chen said with a smile, "But second young master's luck is pretty good. The bandits that robbed him only recently arrived at the Shangmeng Mountain. Their strength is pretty good. I heard that because of second young master's matter, they have already established some rules in the Shangmeng Mountain. In any case, having rules is better than having no rules at all. In the future, our Wei County's people will be able to enter and leave the Shangmeng Mountain much more easily." After saying this, housekeeper Chen said hesitantly, "Patriarch, this old servant has something to say, but I don't know if I should say it." Chu Zongguang said lightly, "Old Chun, you've been with me for decades. What else can't you say?" Housekeeper Chen said in a low voice, "Patriarch, actually, our Chu family is already very strong. Although the eldest young master was a little reckless, his martial arts talent was not bad. With careful guidance, there was hope for him to become an innate in the future." Although the second young master had been disappointing in the past, he had become quite good after the training in the Nanshan mining area. Although his personality was a little radical and bold, he was still quite capable. Although the third young master's mind was a little gloomy, he was still very cautious in his actions. Although the fourth young master was young, he was precocious. If he was carefully nurtured, he would definitely become a great person in the future. Patriarch, if you can give up on studying that thing and properly teach the four young masters, stop them from continuing to fight amongst themselves, our Chu family might be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Shen family in the future." Hearing this, Chu Zongguang's face suddenly became gloomy. "Old Chen, what nonsense are you talking about? You've been with me for so many years. You should know how much I've paid for it. I didn't even hesitate to leave my hometown to come to Tongzhou Prefecture. What is a Shen family? Once I understand how to use it, let alone a mere Tongzhou Prefecture, I, Chu Zongguang, won't even put the entire Wei Prefecture in my eyes." Housekeeper Chen shook his head lightly and sighed silently. He was an old man of the Chu family. When Chu Zongguang was young, he could definitely be considered a young talent. In the end, when he went out to adventure in his early years and brought back that thing, Chu Zongguang seemed to have gone crazy. He brought the family to Tongzhou Prefecture and didn't care about anything else. He only cared about studying that thing. If Chu Zongguang had focused on developing the Chu family, the scale of the Chu family would definitely be much stronger than it was now. Glancing at housekeeper Chen, Chu Zongguang said in a low voice, "Old Chen, I understand what you mean. Don't worry, I know what to do. I haven't even died yet, but my sons are already eyeing the position of patriarch. Only little four can be a bit more honest. In the past, they always fought in the dark. Since they like to fight now, I'll let them fight openly. As long as they don't cause trouble for me, it's fine. Alright, old Chen, go out and help me keep an eye on them. Don't let them cause trouble." Chu Zongguang was stubborn. Housekeeper Chen could only shake his head and leave with a sigh. At this time, Chu Xiu didn't know what his cheap father Chu Zongguang was thinking. He had been living quite well recently. He followed the caravan once and didn't care anymore. In any case, the trade route was already open. He just had to wait to collect the money. The profits of the caravan were usually divided into 3 parts. One part was stored with the caravan to buy materials for the next trip, one part was given to the family, and one part was kept by himself. Chu Xiu was in charge of the caravan. Without hesitation, he transferred a part of the profits that should have been given to the family to himself. The Chu family was the Chu family, and Chu Xiu was Chu Xiu. For him, the entire Chu family, or even the entire Tongzhou Prefecture, was just a springboard for him to enter the Jianghu. Of course, Chu Xiu had to think about his own interests first. While the caravan was traveling, Chu Xiu had been practicing his saber and cultivating his internal strength in his courtyard. Even Gao Bei couldn't bear to watch his desperate actions. Chu Xiu wasn't a masochist. He just didn't know what was ahead of him. There was a sense of urgency that forced him to improve his strength as soon as possible. In the original plot, it was mentioned that the previous owner of this body had left the Tongzhou Prefecture after experiencing a family incident. He stepped into the Jianghu and experienced many hardships, causing his temperament to change greatly. As for what this family incident was and when it would happen, Chu Xiu had no idea. Therefore, he could only find a way to use the Chu family's resources to cultivate as soon as possible, and then directly leave the Chu family. According to Chu Xiu's estimation, as long as his talent wasn't so bad that it would make people angry, after Chu Xiu became the heir of the Chu family and got a lot of resources, with the Xiantian skill as a foundation, he should be able to step into the Xiantian realm very soon. Of course, rice should be eaten one bite at a time, and the road should also be taken one step at a time. At present, what Chu Xiu had to consider was not the Xiantian realm, but the blood condensation realm. The body tempering realm was relatively simple. It was to temper the muscles and bones of the body, because he had the Xiantian skill as a foundation, plus the qi replenishing powder that Chu Xiu had asked for from the pharmacy, and some medicinal pills that he had bought separately during this period. These things added up had greatly increased Chu Xiu's strength within a month. If the current Chu Xiu were to fight with the bandit that tried to kill him, Chu Xiu wouldn't even need to dodge. With just his strength, he would be able to chop his opponent in half. The truly difficult part was the blood condensation realm. Right now, Chu Xiu already felt that he had reached the peak of the body tempering realm. But even after eating several blood condensation pills, he still felt that there was no obvious change in his blood. It was clear that he still needed to temper himself for a period of time. Chu Xiu's life was pretty good, but some people's lives weren't so good. For example, the Chu family's third brother, Chu Sheng. Originally, the only person in the Chu family who had the qualifications to be his opponent was his eldest brother, Chu Xiu. But now, Chu Xiu had suddenly risen to prominence and had enough prestige within the Chu family. Moreover, he was also in charge of a caravan. He could travel 3 or 4 times a month, and each time he would bring back a huge profit, causing Chu Sheng's eyes to turn red. The main thing was that these profits had fallen into Chu Xiu's hands, which made Chu Sheng feel an enormous threat. After pacing around the house several times, Chu Sheng frowned and said, "Mother, we can't continue like this. This Chu Xiu's reputation in the family has already been completely reversed. Moreover, the profits of the caravan have directly doubled in his hands. If this continues, I will definitely lose in a year." The caravan cannot continue to stay in Chu Xiu's hands. The second madam frowned and said, "You want this caravan? It won't be that easy. Master will not give this caravan to you." Chu Sheng's eyes revealed a trace of coldness. He said, "Father won't give it to me, but what if fourth brother wants it? Will he give it to fourth brother?" When the Chu family's the fourth prince, Chu Sheng, was mentioned, Chu Sheng's eyes also revealed a trace of jealousy. The Chu family's four sons, the eldest Chu Xiu, had been doted on a lot when he was young. Later on, Chu Zongguang had been in seclusion all year round and had neglected him. Not to mention Chu Xiu and Chu Sheng. Only the youngest, Chu Sheng, was said to be very similar to Chu Zongguang when he was young. Therefore, even now he was still doted on by Chu Zongguang. This was something that the other three couldn't compare to. The second madam's eyes revealed a trace of light. She said, "This is not impossible. I will go and try." Chapter 16. Of the three madams of the Chu clan, the first madam came from a large clan, and the second madam was the daughter of the head of the Tongzhou Prefecture's opening mountain martial arts school, Ding Kaishan. Only the third madam didn't have any background, and was only the daughter of a small merchant. She was able to marry Chu Zongguang purely because of her youth and beauty. However, the only good thing about this third madam was that she was smart. She knew that her family background was not good, so she did not fight for it. In the end, it was the second madam who took the initiative to win her over. At this time, second foreign arrived at Chu Sheng's courtyard. Third foreign immediately came out and welcomed her with a smile. "Elder sister, why didn't you tell me in advance that you were coming here today?" Chu Sheng followed behind third madam and respectfully called her second madam. The second madam nodded and pulled him into the room. She said lightly, "It's just a casual chat. There's no need to say it in advance. By the way, the shops under Shang are not bad, right? Is it enough?" Third madam's expression changed. She hurriedly said, "Shang'er's shops are all inns and restaurants. They don't have much income. Apart from the money he gave to the family, he doesn't have much money left. However, Shang'er doesn't want to compete for the position of heir, so this little bit of income is just right." Seeing that the third madam seemed to have misunderstood her, the second madam smiled and said, "Sister, you misunderstood me. I didn't mean it that way. Shang'er is still young. Even if he doesn't want to compete for the position of the family head, he should still have some businesses that are more profitable. Just like what you said, the businesses in Shang'er's hands are not very profitable." Third madam and Chu Sheng's eyes lit up. Third madam's expression did not change as she said, "But the Chu family's business is limited. Master has already given Chu Sheng those shops. If I go and ask for more, it would be too ungrateful." The second madam stood up and said, "No matter what master wants, he can exchange it with others. I heard that Chu Xiu's caravan has been making good profits recently. The profits of the caravan have even doubled under his leadership." After saying that, the second madam turned around and left. She believed that the other party would understand what she meant. After second madam left, third madam and Chu Sheng looked at each other. Both of them seemed to have made up their minds. Third madam did not have any background, and Chu Sheng was too young, so it was not up to them to compete. However, they did not fight for it because they could not compete with the eldest son of the Chu clan, nor could they compete with the third son of the Chu clan. But for Chu Xiu, who had no background and was not liked by Chu Zongguang, they could still fight for him. The next morning, Chu Xiu was practicing his saber in his courtyard. The Azure Dragon sleeve was the simplest saber technique, but after repeated practice, it had almost become an instinct. Of course, Chu Xiu did not know the specifics of its power. The path of martial arts was the path of killing. If one did not kill, how could one train a true killing technique? At this moment, someone knocked on the door. He opened the door and saw an old man standing outside. "Second young master. Master is calling for you." The person who came was Housekeeper Chen. Chu Xiu also knew that Housekeeper Chen was Chu Zongguang's personal housekeeper. Although he did not care about the specific affairs, his status in the Chu clan was much higher than that of Housekeeper Lu. Moreover, this Housekeeper Chen treated Chu Xiu very politely. In Chu Xiu's memory, when he was in the Chu clan, the elders and granduncles of the Chu clan, as well as housekeepers like housekeeper Lu, were all very arrogant towards him. Only this housekeeper Chen would call him second young master every time he saw Chu Xiao. In return for a plum, Chu Xiao was also very polite to this housekeeper Chen. He nodded and said, "Housekeeper Chen, please wait a moment, I will change my clothes." After changing his clothes, Chu Xiao followed housekeeper Chen to Chu Zongguang's residence. However, on the way, housekeeper Chen suddenly said, "Second young master, I hope that second young master can calm down when master says something." Speaking up to hear, housekeeper Chen sighed. Chu Zongguang's actions were indeed a bit excessive, but the Chu clan was like this, there was no such thing as fairness. He was just worried that this second young master's character was a bit extreme. If he did something that he shouldn't do in Chu Zongguang's residence, then it would be bad. Hearing housekeeper Chen's words, Chu Xiao immediately knew that this time, nothing good would come out of it. However, Chu Xiao still smiled and nodded. "Thank you for your reminder, housekeeper Chen. I know what I'm doing." After his rebirth, the memories of his two lives merged. Naturally, the memories of his previous life, Chu Xiao, took the initiative. But this life's memories also affected his character. In his previous life, Chu Xiao's character tended to be gloomy and calm. He did things with a plan, and he also saw things very clearly. But in this life, Chu Xiao's character was cowardly and reckless. This character didn't affect Chu Xiao. On the contrary, in the Nanshan mining area, Chu Xiao was infected with a tyrannical and crazy character. This changed the current Chu Xiao's character. For example, the Li family's Li Tong provoked Chu Xiao. As a result, Chu Xiao didn't hesitate to stab him to death. Afterwards, Chu Xiao didn't feel the slightest bit of discomfort. Of course, even if Chu Xiao's character was mixed with a bit of tyrannical and crazy character, he still had the confidence to suppress it. At the critical moment, it wouldn't ruin things. Chu Xiao was led into Chu Zongguang's study by housekeeper Chen. At this time, in addition to Chu Zongguang, the fourth prince, Chu Shang, was also present. "I've seen father." Chu Xiao gave Chu Zongguang a salute. On his side, Chu Shang also cupped his hands towards Chu Xiao. With a respectful look on his face, Chu Shang said, "I've seen second brother." Chu Xiao's eyes narrowed. Ever since he was a child, his fourth brother had only called him second brother a few times. Seeing Chu Xiao arrive, Chu Zongguang coughed and said, "Sit down. I called you here today, because I want to discuss something with you." Chu Xiao cupped his hands and said, "What is it, father? Please speak." Chu Zongguang said, "Recently, your caravan has been developing very well. I didn't expect you to grow a lot in the Nanshan mining area. Regardless of whether you become the successor of my Chu family in the future, you will certainly be the cornerstone of my Chu family. Therefore, you two brothers must be harmonious and help each other." Chu Xiao secretly frowned. Chu Zongguang's words were a bit strange. How could Chu Zongguang not know about the situation between them? Harmonious brothers? Looking at their current appearance, it was as if they were about to stab each other face to face. However, thinking like this in his heart, Chu Xiao still nodded and said, "What father says is correct." Chu Zongguang nodded and said, "It's good that you can think like this. It's like this. Although Chu Shang is still young, he should also gain some experience. Last time, you personally led a caravan to the Yan Empire. This was very good. Chu Shang now wants to learn from your second brother and lead a caravan to gain experience. Therefore, I want to exchange your caravan with Chu Shang's shop and let your fourth brother take care of the caravan." A haze appeared in Chu Xiao's eyes. No wonder housekeeper Chen told him to calm down. His father's bias was too obvious. When the caravan was in danger, Chu Shang didn't go. When the profits were low, Chu Shang also didn't go. When the caravan was safe and unimpeded, Chu Shang was ready to let Chu Shang go. This act of plucking peaches was too ugly. To the side, housekeeper Chen also nervously looked at Chu Xiao, afraid that he wouldn't be able to control his anger and explode on the spot. But contrary to housekeeper Chen's expectations, Chu Xiao was only silent for a moment. Then he raised his head and smiled. "Since father has already made your decision, then fine. I'll let fourth brother take care of the caravan." Chu Zongguang nodded with satisfaction. He wanted stability in everything. What he hated the most was his son going against his will. Seeing Chu Xiu being so tactful, Chu Zongguang said, "Seeing you two brothers in harmony, I'm satisfied. How about this? All of Chu Shang's shops are inns and restaurants. I'll also give you a weapon shop and let you manage them together." Chu Zongguang then turned to Chu Shang and said, "Although the caravan is yours, you are still young. You must learn with an open mind. How about this? When the caravan leaves, I'll have Lin Qian go with you." A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. Lin Qian was one of the Chu clan's two strongest retainers. He was at the blood condensation realm. Normally, he was only responsible for guiding a few of the Chu clan's disciples in their cultivation. Back then, Shangmeng Mountain was incomparably dangerous, but Chu Zongguang had only told him to be careful. Now it was Chu Shang who had blood condensation retainers to protect him. They were both his sons, but the difference was not small. Of course, Chu Xiu didn't feel it was unfair. In his heart, he had never considered Chu Zongguang his father. Even the memories of his previous life were the same. Towards Chu Zongguang, there was only fear. Moreover, within the Chu clan, only Chu Shang could enjoy this kind of treatment. Chu Kai and Chu Sheng were not much better off than him. Chu Shang's eyes revealed a proud expression. He first bowed to Chu Zongguang and said, "Many thanks, father." Then he specially cupped his hands towards Chu Xiu and said, "Many thanks, second brother." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and indifferently said, "It's nothing. It's just that the trade route is rugged. Fourth brother, you should be a bit more careful." After saying this, Chu Xiu directly said his goodbyes and left. But his eyes revealed a cold light. Whether it was his previous life or this life, what he hated the most was people stealing his things. Chapter 17. The change from second young master Chu Xiu to fourth young master Chu Shang as the manager of the caravan surprised the people of the Chu family, but they soon understood. Everyone in the Chu family knew that the master favored the fourth young master the most, but the people of the caravan felt a bit awkward. Although Chu Xiu had only been in charge of the caravan for a short period of time, Chu Xiu still had quite a bit of prestige in the caravan. The managers who wanted to oppose Chu Xiu in the past had already been killed by Chu Xiu. The remaining people of the caravan had a very simple mindset. As long as the treatment was good enough, they would be satisfied. Chu Xiu gave them more rewards than before, and after Chu Xiu no longer moved with the caravan, he promoted a few more managers. These people were also very free. As long as they didn't do anything behind the scenes, Chu Xiu wouldn't make things difficult for them. Now that someone had suddenly changed, they were not used to it. At this time, in the courtyard where the people of the caravan were resting, a slightly protruding monkey-like man approached a man wearing a short robe and asked, "Brother Lu, I heard that our caravan will be managed by the fourth young master in the future. What do you think?" This brother Lu's full name was Lu Yucheng. When Chu Xiu took over the caravan, this guy was the first to jump out and oppose Chu Xiu, but when he heard that the treatment of the caravan would increase, he was the first to surrender. Although he was a bit two-faced, he was still very clever, so he was promoted by Chu Xiu to be the manager of the caravan. He was also an old member of the caravan, and had a good relationship with everyone, so he wouldn't suddenly become arrogant just because he was promoted. Hearing the servant's question, Lu Yuqing shook his head and said, "Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Don't you know the matters of the young masters? The second young master is good to us, but how can we go against the fourth young master? Just do your work honestly, don't think too much about useless things." Just as he finished speaking, the door to the courtyard was pushed open, and Chu Shang walked in with a few attendants. Behind him was a man in his 40s. He was dressed in a blue warrior suit, and had a long sword at his waist. His expression was cold. He was the retainer of the Chu family, Lin Qian. His status in the Chu family was very high, even higher than some of the elders of the Chu family. Although some of the Chu family's elders were in the blood condensation realm, they had long since become too old to fight. It was only because they were Chu Zongguang's seniors that they were able to sit in the elder's position. But this Lin Qian was a blood condensation martial artist in the prime of his life. It was said that he came from a small sect and roamed Jianghu in his early years. Later, he was recruited by the Chu family and became a retainer. He had already stayed in the Chu family for many years. Even Chu Shang respectfully called him Uncle Lin. Seeing Chu Xiu walk in, Lu Yuqing and the other 2 caravan managers promoted by Chu Xiu immediately came over and saluted. "Greetings, 4th young master." Chu Shang nodded and said lightly, "Are all the caravan's people here?" Lu Yuqing nodded and said, "They're all here." "That's good. Tell everyone to pack up and prepare to leave tomorrow." Lu Yuqing was startled. "4th young master, we just came back yesterday. According to the rules, we should rest for 3 days before leaving." Chu Shang frowned. Every time the caravan returns, they need to rest. During those few days of rest, they can go to the Yin Kingdom again every month. Tell everyone to prepare now and set off tomorrow. Lu Yuqing bitterly smiled. "But 4th young master, people are not made of iron. The trade route in Shangmeng Mountain is hard to travel on, and there are all kinds of snakes and rats. If we don't rest for a while, we really won't be able to endure. That's why 2nd young master told us to rest for 3 days." Hearing Lu Yuqing mention Chu Xiu, Chu Shang's expression immediately changed. He coldly snorted and said, "Don't forget, the current manager of the caravan is me." Chu Shang suddenly thought of something and frowned. "You 3 are managers?" Lu Yuqing and the other 2 nodded, feeling that something was wrong. Sure enough, Chu Shang immediately said, "From now on you are not." Saying this, Chu Shang directly let his trusted subordinates take over the position of manager, regardless of whether they had experience in managing a caravan or not. Lu Yuqing and the others stared dumbfoundedly at all this. Although they were dissatisfied, they could only hold it in. At this time, Chu Xiu had returned to his courtyard. Gao Bei carefully followed beside him. Although Chu Xiu did not tell him, the Chu family was only so big, and those rumors had already spread. Now that 2nd young master had lost the caravan, he was probably so angry that he wanted to kill someone. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Is there anyone in Chu Shang's inns and restaurants?" Gao Bei was startled for a moment, then said, "I don't think so. The inns and restaurants are all small businesses, so it doesn't matter who is in charge. Therefore, the inns and restaurant shopkeepers are all old people of the Chu family. 4th young master is only in charge of collecting money. He does not interfere with the business." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's good. Go and prepare to move out of the family. I heard that the backyard of my Chu family's restaurant is big enough, so move there." Gao Bei was slightly startled, but he did not care. He thought that Chu Xiu disliked his courtyard in the Chu family, because it was too simple. In fact, this kind of thing was very common. Except for the youngest Chu Shang, Chu Kai and Chu Xing all had their own courtyards outside. After all, they were all adults, and some things that were inconvenient to do in the mansion could be done outside. Early the next morning, the Chu family's gate was very lively. One was Chu Shang preparing to set off with his caravan, and the other was Chu Xiu ordering people to move his things out of the Chu family's residence. The 2 sides just happened to meet. Chu Shang was dressed in tight clothes, with a long sword at his waist. He was riding a red northern wind-chasing horse. He did not look like a manager of a caravan, but more like a young master who was ready to roam the world at any time. At this time, when he looked at Chu Xiu, there was a trace of pride in his eyes, but in fact, there was also a trace of jealousy and hatred towards Chu Xiu. Previously in the Chu family, he was the youngest. Although he was favored, because his mother had no background, he could only keep a low profile. But at least compared to him, there was still Chu Xiu who could be a scapegoat. This made Chu Shang feel some psychological comfort. But who would have thought that since Chu Xiu came back from the Nanshan mining area, he seemed to have changed into a different person, and quickly established prestige in the family. As for Chu Shang, he was still a transparent person. It seemed that the only impression he gave people was that he was well-behaved and liked by the family head. Now with just a few words, he had successfully won over Chu Xiu's hard work. After all, he was still young. Yesterday, when he was with Chu Zongguang, he could still endure, but now that Chu Zongguang was gone, he couldn't help but show off in front of Chu Xiu. "Second brother, you have also traveled this trade route once, so it can be said that you have some experience." What experience do you have to pass on to your little brother? Chu Shang rode his horse to the front of Chu Xiu, looking down at him with a face full of ridicule. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Experience? Yesterday, I told you that the trade route is rugged, so be careful. The bandits don't care whether you are a member of the Chu family or not. Once you leave the Tongzhou prefecture, the face of the Chu family will not be easy to use. If you travel through Shangmeng Mountain, you will see blood." As soon as the last sentence was said, a scarlet killing intent flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes, causing Chu Shang to jump in fright. But in the blink of an eye, the killing intent had already disappeared. Even Chu Shang thought that he had seen wrong. However, he did not dare to provoke Chu Xiu again. He just coldly snorted and urged the caravan to set off. Chu Shang handed over a total of 4 inns, a restaurant, and a weapon shop to Chu Xiu. However, Chu Xiu did not have much interest in the weapon shop. The Chu family only sold ordinary weapons, and at most, they were only at the first job transition. Apart from the steady monthly income, they did not have much use for them. After Chu Xiu moved his residence to the backyard of the restaurant, Gao Bei also brought 5 nervous shopkeepers to see Chu Xiu. They were just ordinary people, and did not even know much about the internal affairs of the Chu family. Now that the person in charge had suddenly changed, they all felt a little uneasy. Looking at the 5 shopkeepers, Chu Xiu smiled and said, "There is no need to be nervous. Professional matters will be handled by professionals. In the future, the inns and restaurants will still be managed as they should be. Nothing will change." However, Chu Xiu suddenly changed his tone and said, "However, I still have something for you to do." The shopkeepers hurriedly said, "Second young master, please instruct us." Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Our Tong province is the prefecture closest to the Yan kingdom. Therefore, when the caravans from the other prefectures of the Wei prefecture travel to the Yan kingdom, most of them will stop at our Tong province. These people can be considered as competitors of our Chu clan's caravans. So, get your men to be more alert and record down everything they hear. This is all useful information, and you must pass it to me every day." Previously, Chu Xiu had promised to give Han Bao information on these caravans. Over the past month, Chu Xiu had indeed given Han Bao a lot of information. However, this information had all been obtained by Chu Xiu's men standing guard at the entrance of the inns. It had taken a lot of effort. Now it would undoubtedly be much easier to get the people in the inns and restaurants to pass this information to him. Moreover, Chu Xiu didn't have to worry about them leaking anything. These people in the inns and restaurants actually had nothing to do with the Chu clan. Normally, they didn't even need to contact the Chu clan. They just needed to pay the money on time every month, and that was enough. These were just small matters, so the few shopkeepers quickly agreed. After instructing them with a few polite words, Chu Xiu sent them away. Turning around, Chu Xiu said to Gao Bei, "Get ready. Come with me to Shangmeng Mountain tomorrow morning." As soon as he heard that Chu Xiu wanted to go to Shangmeng Mountain, Gao Bei immediately shivered. He was really a little afraid of those bandits. However, as afraid as he was, he still nodded and didn't refuse. Just like what Chu Xiu had said to him in Yuanbao town, life and death are determined by fate, and wealth and honor are determined by heaven. If you want wealth and honor, you can only fight for it. During this period of time, he had become Chu Xiu's confidant. He didn't do as much as before, but he received a lot of money. He even bought a small courtyard in Tongzhou prefecture, and brought his younger brother there. In the Chu clan, because Chu Xiu's status had risen, his status had also risen. Those servants who used to look down on him now called him elder brother. Just as Chu Xiu had said, there was no time to be content. Although Gao Bei was an honest man, he had already enjoyed all this. Of course, he didn't want to go back. As for Chu Xiu's orders, no matter how much he resisted, he didn't dare to refuse. Or rather, he didn't want to refuse. Chapter 18. Chu Xiu was now an acquaintance of the stronghold in Beishangmeng Mountain, so he was directly invited to the meeting hall. Han Bao came out with Ma Kuo, his face flushed. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Looking at you, it seems that business has been good recently." "Ah, It's more than good. My stronghold's income has increased by more than 10 times. Now almost all of Beishangmeng Mountain is my territory. If other strongholds want to establish themselves in Beishangmeng Mountain, they have to listen to me. Han Bao sat opposite Chu Xiu and said with a smile, Chu Xiu boy, your idea is not bad. I'll accept it. Don't leave, I've already asked people to prepare a banquet. Let's drink until we're drunk. Chu Xiu raised his hand and said, There's no hurry to drink. Boss Han, this time I came to ask you for a favor. Han Bao narrowed his eyes and said, Oh, who do you want to rob and kill? He was a rough man, and his words and actions were very direct. Chu Xiu had given him an idea and helped him provide information, but there was no free lunch in this world. Now it was his turn. Chu Xiu said lightly, My fourth brother Chu Shang. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Han Bao and Ma Kuo looked at each other and felt a chill in their hearts. Chu Xiu's way of doing things was truly sinister. He had robbed and killed his own people twice. The first time it was okay, it was just some servants. This time, it was even better. It was directly their own brothers. But they didn't say anything. Han Bao and Ma Kuo were both part of the 36 Northern Bandits. They were not inexperienced bandits. They had seen brothers fighting each other many times. Now that Chu Xiu was doing this, they wouldn't make a fuss. So Han Bao asked directly, This time, do you want to kill the leader like last time and leave the rest? Chu Xiu indifferently said, The leaders have all been killed. Furthermore, there's also a blood condensation cultivator in this group. Boss Han, you need to personally deal with him. Of course, you can't kill my fourth brother. After all, he's my blood brother. Han Bao rolled his eyes. Just as he was about to say, Since that's your biological brother, why are you asking me to kill him? But who would have thought that Chu Xiu would wave his hand and say, Of course I can't kill my own brother, but he made me very unhappy this time, so I'll just cripple him and teach him a lesson. Han Bao's words were immediately choked back by Chu Xiu. He thought to himself, You might as well kill him. Although the Chu family was small, it was still a martial arts family. What was a martial arts family? Martial arts were passed down through the family. Martial strength was ranked above that of the family. If a person was crippled, it wouldn't matter if he was born into a rich family. But if he was born into a martial arts family, then he would be crippled for the rest of his life. It was practically a life worse than death. Seeing Han Bao and Ma Kuo's speechless expressions, Chu Xiu smiled and said, Boss Han, I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. Leave my brother alive. Otherwise it would be easy to kill him. But he's my father's most beloved son. If he dies, the Northern Mang Mountain will never have a day of peace. Han Bao coldly laughed and said, Chu Xiu brat, I'm not slandering your Chu family. But your father Chu Zongguang's strength is nothing compared to the Northern Land's 36 bandits. When I, Han Bao, followed the boss back then, I was just an unremarkable small character. But now that I can't find the boss, I can only become a bandit in this remote place. Right now, I still have internal injuries that haven't healed. Once I recover, I'll even dare to fight against the Tong Prefecture's Shen family's leader, Shen Bai. When he said this, Han Bao didn't exude arrogance, but confidence, strong confidence. Although he, Han Bao, was just a small character among the Northern Land's 36 bandits, who were the enemies of the Northern Land's 36 bandits. They were the top martial arts forces in the country of Yan, and the entire Northern Yan dynasty. Against these people, Han Bao could be said to have been through hundreds of battles. Although they were all at the innate stage, martial arts itself was the way of killing. Martial artists like Han Bao, who had killed their way through mountains of corpses and seas of blood, were the strongest. Chu Xiu laughed and said, But the problem now, Boss Han, is that your injuries haven't healed yet, so there's no need to stir up trouble. By the way, there's one more thing I'd like to discuss with you, Boss Han. I'd like to ask Brother Ma and his brothers to come to the Tong Prefecture to help me temporarily. Don't worry, the money will not be less. It's definitely more than the Chu family's hanger-ons. Chu Xiu had no choice but to ask Ma Kuo for help. There was almost no one under him that he could use. Gao Bei was loyal enough, but it was a pity that he was too timid. It would be difficult for him to achieve anything great, so he could only ask him to do some chores. If Chu Xiu asked him to handle the big things, It would be purely making things difficult for Gao Bei. Looking at the other members of the Chu family, Chu Kai was the eldest son, and his subordinates were strong. Chu Sheng had also accumulated a lot. Even the youngest, Chu Shang, had no background, but he was the most favored. Chu Zongguang was even willing to send a blood condensation hanger-on to him. Right now, Chu Xiu's foundation was the weakest. Even if he started training him now, Chu Xiu would think it was too slow. So he could only turn his attention to Han Bao. Chu Xiu had seen Ma Kuo's strength before. He was definitely one of the top body tempering cultivators, and he was also a meticulous person. Sometimes he would think more than Han Bao, the chief. He could be considered a capable person. Han Bao's expression was a little strange. Aren't you afraid that people will find out that you're colluding with bandits? Chu Xiu shook his head. Of course not. Brother Ma wasn't in the northern Death Mang Mountain before. He only fought a few times in the southern Death Mang Mountain. No one in the Tong Province Prefecture has seen him. The only time Brother Ma fought was when he robbed a caravan. But that was at night, and everyone in the caravan who had seen Brother Ma were already dead. Our Chu family has always been recruiting hanger-ons. As long as I don't recruit Brother Ma and the others all at once, it won't raise any suspicions. Han Bao turned to Ma Kuo and asked, "What do you think?" Han Bao had more than 10 people under him who were about as strong as Ma Kuo. Now that their stronghold had pretty much controlled the entire northern Death Mang Mountain, they had no shortage of people. As long as Ma Kuo agreed, it wouldn't be a problem to borrow a few dozen of Chu Xiu's men. Ma Kuo flexed his wrists. Of course it's not a problem. I've been idling around in this stronghold all day. Even if young Master Chu hadn't come looking for me, I would have returned to the southern Death Mang Mountain to be a bandit for a few more days. Han Bao ignored Ma Kuo's complaints. He asked Chu Xiu, "When do you plan to make a move on your brother's caravan?" Chu Xiu thought for a moment. "Let's not make a move this time. Let them pass the Shangmang Mountain safely. We'll make our move when they return. Otherwise, it'll be very suspicious if they get robbed right after they set off." Han Bao waved his hand. "If that's the case, then there's no need to rush. I'll have someone prepare a banquet. Let's drink till we're drunk." Although Han Bao and the others were no longer low-level bandits, some of the habits of bandits still remained, such as when they drank. Chu Xiu was drunk for the entire night. The next morning he left with Ma Kuo and the others. On their way down the mountain, Chu Xiu and Ma Kuo bumped into Feng Yidao, one of Han Bao's subordinates. Now Han Bao's subordinates no longer had to spend so much effort to ambush caravans. With Chu Xiu's information, they could wait for the caravans along the general route in advance. All they had to do was pay up. After a month, the caravans that came and went from the Shangmang Mountain also knew this rule. To them, it was worth it to spend money to buy their safety. Although it was a lot of money, it was worth it. Feng Yidao watched Ma Kuo leave with Chu Xiu. He even changed his clothes to that of an ordinary martial artist. He couldn't help but ask, "Where are you guys going?" Ma Kuo pointed at Chu Xiu and said, "Young Master Chu needs some people. He hired us to help him. You haven't opened your business yet?" Feng Yidao said lazily, "According to the information given by young Master Chu, there's a caravan from the Luo family coming back from the Yan Kingdom. The Luo family is a small family. They're too slow. I've been waiting here since morning, but they haven't arrived yet." Hearing Feng Yidao's words, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He asked, "Chief Feng, is the Luo family from the small Shuangfeng town?" Feng Yidao scratched his head. "Yes, it's that small family. This information was given to us by young Master Chu. Don't you know about it?" Chu Xiu shook his head. "This information was collected by my subordinates. I didn't check them one by one. Chief Feng, I have something that I need your help with. Young Master Chu, please tell me." Feng Yidao agreed quickly. Feng Yidao naturally wouldn't be interested in ordinary young masters. However, this young Master Chu in front of him was in a cooperative relationship with their village. Naturally, he was one of them. Moreover, their boss had commented on this Chu Xiu before. Ma Kuo said that this Chu Xiu's saber was very fast, but Boss Han said that compared to his saber, this person's heart was even more vicious. Boss Han used to be Leader Pang Pang's personal guard. He could be considered a knowledgeable person. In any case, Feng Yidao rarely saw Boss Han comment on a young man like that. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "I'm interested in some things from the Luo family. I'd like to trouble Chief Feng to help me get them. Of course, don't break the rules too much. Be more tactful." If Chu Xiu remembered correctly, in the original plot, the Luo family from the Shuangfeng town had received a batch of secret boxes from the merchants from the Yan Kingdom. The merchants from the Yan Kingdom didn't bring enough money with them, and used them to pay off their debts. Originally, the Luo family didn't pay much attention to it. However, who would have thought that the secret boxes would really contain two good things? At least for a small family like the Luo family, it was good stuff. In the end, the news was accidentally leaked, and it even caused the surrounding small families to join forces and annihilate the Luo family. This time, Chu Xiu did a good deed by getting the secret boxes. At least without the treasures, the Luo family wouldn't be annihilated. On the other side, Feng Yidao waved his hand and said, "Young Master Chu, don't worry. Leave it to me." Chapter 19. The Luo clan was a very small clan. It couldn't even be called a martial arts clan because there were only a few people who practiced martial arts in the entire clan. Some of the people escorting the caravan didn't even practice martial arts, and were just ordinary servants. A steward of the Luo clan's caravan shouted to the caravan, "Hurry up! Wait until we get out of Shangmeng Mountain, and pass by Tongzhou Prefecture before resting." The caravan moved forward with difficulty on the small path. At this time, Feng Yidao and the others openly blocked the road without any concealment. If it was in the past, the Luo clan's caravan would definitely turn around and run. But now the Luo clan steward smiled and approached Feng Yidao. He smiled apologetically and took out an ingot of silver and said, "Heroes of Shangmeng Mountain, this is the toll fee. Heroes, take it and have some wine." Feng Yidao didn't take the silver ingot. Instead, he slapped it away and said with a gloomy expression, "You motherf **, are you messing with me? 50 taels of silver is enough for me to have some wine. But what about the brothers behind me? Are they going to starve to death?" The Luo clan steward was shocked. He immediately complained, "Heroes of Shangmeng Mountain, I'm really not messing with you. The toll fee has always been 10% of the value of the goods. My Luo clan brought a lot of goods with us, but that was because they had already paid a deposit. Therefore, when we came back, we only brought back about 500 taels of silver worth of goods. Most of the goods are local specialties of Yan Kingdom. Don't think that it's a lot, it's actually not worth much. Why don't you go and have a look?" Feng Yidao directly waved his hand and said, "I don't care about that. When you came back, didn't you tell me in advance that you didn't bring those goods? Just for your 50 taels of silver. I ended up waiting here with my men for the whole morning. What do you think we should do about this?" At this time, the Luo clan steward was about to cry. Facing such a group of fierce bandits, what could they do? Feng Yidao chuckled and said, "Don't blame me for bullying you. How about this? You can leave, but leave the goods behind. Next time, remember to be smart. Don't say that I broke the rules. If something like this happens in the future, tell me in advance." The steward from the Luo clan was just about to say something when he saw Feng Yidao's expression sink. Feng Yidao coldly said, "What? You're not willing? Do you want money more than your life?" After being frightened by Feng Yidao, the steward of the Luo clan did not dare to say anything else. He immediately led his men and fled in panic. After everyone left, Chu Xiu and Ma Kuo walked out of the forest. Feng Yidao waved his hand and said, "Young Master Chu, if there's anything you like, feel free to take it." Chu Xiu rummaged through the goods. Among them, there were more than 10 secret boxes. He took the secret boxes and said to Feng Yidao, "Chief Feng, I'll leave the rest of these things to you." Feng Yidao saw that Chu Xiu only took the secret boxes, but he did not say anything. In the past, when the 36 bandits of the northern region were at their strongest, they had obtained quite a few secret boxes. However, the element of luck in these things was too poor. Normally, if someone found the ruins of a big clan, they would know without saying that there must be good things in the secret boxes. They would snatch them first, and then think about it later. They would not be able to get to the outside world. Most of the secret boxes that did get to the outside world were of unknown origin, or they were excavated from the ruins of some small clan. Basically, there was nothing good in them. After getting the secret boxes, Chu Xiu went down the mountain with Ma Kuo and the others. However, after entering the Tongzhou prefecture, they separated. With so many people joining Chu Xiu's group at the same time, it was very suspicious. Therefore, Ma Kuo and the others would enter the Tongzhou prefecture in batches and join his group in batches. After returning to his courtyard, Chu Xiu opened the secret boxes one by one and checked the things inside. The two things that the Luo family had obtained should be good things, but they were not treasures. Otherwise, the news would have spread out a long time ago, and it would not be a fight between a few small clans. After opening the secret boxes one by one, when Chu Xiu opened the fifth box, a sheepskin book appeared in front of Chu Xiu. The words blood knife scripture were written on it. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. This skill had appeared in the original world, and it was evaluated as a third-grade skill. It was not high, but it was definitely not low either. After opening it, the knife skill in the blood knife scripture could only be summarized in one sentence. Evil and ruthless. The angle of the knife was extremely strange, and it was impossible to guard against it. Almost every move was a killing move. It was obvious that it was an extremely evil skill, but it was also quite to Chu Xiu's liking. Chu Xiu had practiced the Azure Dragon in the sleeve to a beginner level. Even drawing the knife out of the sheath had become an instinct. However, the Azure Dragon in the sleeve was supposed to be a skill to hide the knife. It was particular about the Azure Dragon goes to sea, and it was a surprise at the moment of a fatal strike. However, now that he was facing an enemy, because Chu Xiu had no other skills to defend himself, he could only choose to use the Azure Dragon in the sleeve as soon as possible. It would be fine if this knife could kill or seriously injure the opponent. However, if the opponent blocked or dodged it, Chu Xiu's knife would lose its meaning, and its power would decrease by 90%. Now, with the help of the blood knife scripture, Chu Xiu's combat power could be increased a little. The blood knife scripture was put away by Chu Xiu, and he prepared to practice it later. A third-grade skill was indeed a treasure for a small clan like the Luo family. It was no wonder that it would cause a fight. The remaining secret boxes were also opened by Chu Xiu. However, the things inside were somewhat unexpected. It turned out to be a mechanical hidden weapon, and it was a hidden weapon from the Thousand Machines sect. During the Great Calamity of ancient times, the Tang sect of Sichuan was the strongest in the field of hidden weapons. After the calamity, the survivors of the Tang sect of Sichuan rebuilt the Tang sect and changed its name to the Tang Family Fortress. It was the top martial arts force in the land of West Chu. Moreover, before the Great Calamity, the Thousand Machines sect's attainments in the field of hidden weapons were second only to the Tang sect. However, the difference between the two sects and the Tang sect was the understanding of hidden weapons. The Tang sect paid particular attention to the use of hidden weapons and poisons. It was still based on people and supplemented by hidden weapons. The current Tang Family Fortress followed the path of the Tang sect in the past. The Thousand Machines sect mainly researched mechanical hidden weapons, which could be used by ordinary people. Although the cost was high, it was undoubtedly more suitable for some low-level martial artists. Unfortunately, the inheritance of the Thousand Machines sect had been broken. Although the Tang Family Fortress would sometimes make some mechanical hidden weapons, there were not many. The hidden weapon in Chu Xiu's hand was called the Thousand-Leaf Plume. It looked like a cylinder, and there were instructions in the secret case. As long as the trigger was pressed, the thousands of metal leaves that were as thin as cicadas' wings would explosively shoot out. Its might was extremely terrifying, but it was a pity that it could only be used once. Moreover, the instructions said that the Thousand-Leaf Plume could theoretically kill a Xiantian martial artist, but that was only in theory. In a face-to-face situation, a Xiantian martial artist would definitely be able to block this hidden weapon if they were prepared. As Chu Xiu was bitterly practicing the Blood Blade scripture, Chu Shang had already brought the caravan back to the Tongzhou prefecture. For Chu Shang, this time's caravan was just like a vacation, without the slightest pressure. With the protection of a blood condensation expert like Lin Qian, when they passed through Shangmeng Mountain, They paid the toll according to the rules. The bandits also obediently let them pass. And there was no danger at all. Thinking of this, his proposal to trade for Chu Xiu's caravan with his father was simply a great profit. Of course, Chu Shang could only bring this up once. If he brought it up again, he would be asking for a foot after taking an inch. He was not an idiot, and he knew that his father's love for him was limited. If he provoked Chu Zongguang's disgust, then his position in the Chu clan would be no different from Chu Xiu's. Just as he was thinking of this, over 100 bandits appeared in front of him, blocking the road and collecting the toll. The person leading them was still Feng Yidao. He often guarded this area, so the Chu clan's caravan members all recognized him. One of Chu Shang's subordinates handed over a banknote and cupped his hands. "Leader Feng, please let us pass." Feng Yidao frowned. "Only 400 taels, why is it so little? We'll go search it." The steward hurriedly said, "Leader Feng, our Chu clan has always followed the rules. We definitely won't be short of the toll we should pay." Feng Yidao sneered. "Whether you follow the rules or not, it's not up to you, it's up to me. Now you won't let me search. Could it be that there's something fishy going on?" Chu Shang's eyes revealed a hint of anger. The last time he went to Yin Kingdom, he did not suffer this kind of humiliation. Just as he was about to say something, a steward next to him quickly pulled him back. "Fourth young master, don't be impulsive. This is Shangmang Mountain. If they want to search, then let them search. In any case, we didn't do anything." Chu Shang coldly snorted, "Let them search." Several bandits walked over and searched the caravan one by one. After calculating for a bit, they whispered a few words into Feng Yidao's ear. Feng Yidao sneered. "You still say you didn't do anything fishy? Your caravan's goods are worth around 6,000 taels, so the toll is not 400, but 600. Hearing this, Chu Shang couldn't bear it anymore. He pointed at Feng Yidao and angrily shouted, "You are deliberately looking for trouble. What do bandits know about the price? This caravan of goods is for you. If you can sell it for 6,000 taels, these goods will belong to you." Hearing this, the steward next to Chu Shang immediately cursed in his heart. This fourth young master was too impulsive. He actually dared to go against those bandits. Although he had never been a steward of a caravan before, he knew that when people were under someone else's roof, they had no choice but to lower their head. This was Shangmang Mountain, the territory of those bandits. Wasn't it just 200 taels more? If these bandits wanted to extort money, then they could just spend 200 taels more to buy their safety. Why bother clashing with them? Chapter 20. Feng Yidao originally came to look for trouble. Hearing Chu Shang's words, he sneered and said, "Little brat, you're courting death. Do I need you to teach me how to do things? Fine, don't think of leaving Shangmang Mountain today. Leave the goods, and leave the people behind." Chu Shang's face did not show any fear. He cupped his hands towards Lin Qian and said, "Uncle Lin, I'll leave this place to you." Chu Shang was not an idiot. If not for an expert like Lin Qian, he would not have dared to be so arrogant in a place like Shangmang Mountain that was filled with bandits. Lin Qian rode his horse out of the caravan. With a sword in hand, he casually cupped his hands towards Feng Yidao and said, "It's convenient for others and convenient for ourselves. I advise everyone to give way. Otherwise, there will be no chance to regret when the time comes." Chu Shang proudly said to the stewards in the back, "Did you see that? Uncle Lin has the demeanor of a true expert. Our Chu family is not like those small families that have to be respectful to these bandits and bend their knees. If they follow the rules, then we will also follow the rules. If they don't follow the rules, then we can't just admit defeat. I heard that last time my second brother fought with this bandit leader, and even after winning, he still gave money to the other party. This is simply a disgrace to our Chu clan." The stewards of the caravan looked at each other and revealed a bitter smile. They were all Chu Shang's men, but they were also elders of the Chu clan. They still had some understanding of the ways of the world. This Shangmang Mountain was the territory of these bandits. This time, they had Lin Qian's protection and could safely return, but because of this, they had also offended the bandits in Shangmang Mountain. Would their Chu clan be able to leave Shangmeng Mountain the next time? Lin Qian was a guest of the Chu clan, not a servant of the caravan. He would always accompany them on their travels. Moreover, they had heard that the bandits in Shangmeng Mountain were very strong, and there were even Xiantian realm experts among them. If they were to alarm the Xiantian realm experts, even Lin Qian would not be able to protect them. Could the clan head personally escort the caravan? The fourth young master had actually said that the second young master had lost face for the Chu clan. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the second young master had done the safest thing. First, they had defeated the bandit, gaining face and displaying their Chu clan strength. Then they had given the bandit some money to ease their relationship, allowing the bandit to escort them out of Shangmeng Mountain. Using both kindness and power, they had even received some benefits from the bandit. This was a wise move. The managers of the caravans all shook their heads. They had already been won over by Third Madam with a large sum of money. Even if Chu Shang really was a good-for-nothing, there was nothing they could do. At this time Lin Qian's face was filled with arrogance. He did not care about the tempered body realm martial artist and the group of small fries. Even though Lin Qian knew that if he touched these bandits today, then the Chu clan's next trip to Shangmeng Mountain would not be so smooth. But he was only a retainer of the Chu clan. Chu Shang ordered him to do it, so why would he care so much? However, at this moment a cold voice rang out. Well said. Sabers and swords have no eyes. If you die here today, don't blame me for being ruthless. Han Bao walked out from the side with a saber that was almost as tall as a person. His eyes flashed with a cold light, and his aura was incomparably violent. The moment he saw Han Bao, Lin Qian immediately cursed inwardly. There was actually such a strong expert among these bandits? Judging from the other party's aura, he should also be in the blood condensation realm. However, his accumulation was much deeper than Lin Qian's, and he was even close to the Xiantian realm. Facing an opponent of this level, Lin Qian was not as confident as before. He hurriedly said, "This," however, before he could finish speaking, Han Bao, who was opposite him, directly raised his Zamadeo, shouted, and directly slashed at him. The saber fell with unparalleled momentum. With every step Han Bao took, the aura on his body grew stronger. By the time the saber was about to hit Lin Qian, there was only one thought in Lin Qian's mind. I can't block it. Therefore, Lin Qian's figure directly jumped off the horse's back. However, the warhorse under him was directly cut in half by Han Bao's saber. Amidst the rain of blood, Lin Qian said in shock, "Military combat techniques." When Lin Qian roamed the pugilistic world in the past, he had seen the military experts of the Northern Yan imperial court in action. They were indeed somewhat different from the people of the pugilistic world. Their martial arts were majestic and incomparably ferocious, and they pursued extreme lethality. Han Bao sneered, "Military my ass." The 36 northern bandits were exterminated by the Northern Yan imperial court in conjunction with the Northern Yan pugilistic world. Naturally, they did not have a good impression of the imperial court. Therefore, Han Bao turned the saber in his hand, and the long saber danced. Like a gale, it slashed at Lin Qian with majestic momentum. Lin Qian gritted his teeth and unsheathed the long sword in his hand. The edge of the sword flickered, and he barely managed to block Han Bao's saber. However, when the saber and sword clashed, Lin Qian suddenly felt a trace of great force coming at him. The hand holding the sword trembled, and the long sword almost flew out of his hand. Lin Qian came from a small pugilistic world sect, and his swordsmanship was also inherited. He walked the light and agile path of orthodox swordsmen. His sword moves were elegant, and the edge of the sword was nimble. However, Han Bao's saber was incomparably ferocious and domineering. It was difficult for Lin Qian to parry the other's saber, and he could not use his own swordsmanship at all. Just as Lin Qian wanted to retreat and temporarily pull away from Han Bao, a murderous intent suddenly appeared in Han Bao's eyes. The saber that was swinging wildly just now suddenly retracted, and the long saber was like a dark snake, stabbing into Lin Qian's crotch. From the bottom to the top, it directly tore Lin Qian in half. In an instant, blood rained down. Chu Shang and the rest were dumbfounded, and their eyes revealed a look of disbelief. Lin Qian was one of the two strongest guests of the Chu family. How could they die just like that? How could he be so easily hacked to death with a single slash? Han Bao directly waved his hand, and a group of bandits immediately surrounded them, their eyes revealing a fierce glint. Chu Shang hurriedly shouted, "Fellow heroes, please wait a moment. I am a member of the Tong State's Chu family." The other stewards wished they could shut Chu Shang's mouth. Why are you still mentioning the Chu family at this time? The Chu family's name was useless in this Shangmang mountain. The corner of Han Bao's mouth revealed a trace of coldness, and he said, "Chu family? Very well, I will give the Chu family face today and spare your life. Kill all the stewards and leave the goods behind. The rest of you, go back and report to your family head. My Shangmang mountain has its rules, and breaking the rules will result in this." Hearing this, Chu Shang immediately let out a sigh of relief. It did not matter if the stewards died or not, as long as he could live. However, at this time, Han Bao suddenly stretched out his hand and directly pulled Chu Shang down from the horse. With 2 stomps, he directly broke both of Chu Shang's legs, and then followed up with 2 stomps, breaking his arms, causing his limbs to be twisted beyond recognition. For a warrior of Chu Shang's level, he had not even cultivated his dantian. Crippling his dantian would be useless, and directly breaking his 4 limbs would be enough. Looking at Chu Shang, who was wailing in pain on the ground, Han Bao sneered, "I only said that I would not kill you, but I did not say that I would let you go. Reincarnate into a good life in your next life." There was still another sentence that Han Bao did not say, and that was to reincarnate into a good life in your next life, and not become brothers with a vicious guy like Chu Xiao. Otherwise, you would not even know how you died. After dealing with the matter, Han Bao waved his hand, and the other bandits directly took the caravan's goods and left, leaving behind the wailing Chu Shang and a group of Chu family members with a frightened expression. 3 days later, Chu Xiao was practicing the blood saber scripture in his own courtyard. This new courtyard was much larger than the small courtyard he had in the Chu clan. There were wooden stakes all around it, but some of them had already been hacked out of shape by Chu Xiao, so much so that they had to be wrapped in a layer of metal. Ma Kuo stood to the side with his heavy sword. When Chu Xiao finished practicing, he could not help but shake his head and said, "Child Chu, where did you learn this evil saber technique? It's really evil and not the right path." Chu Xiao flicked the goose feather saber in his hand and said lightly, "Martial arts are used to kill people. It doesn't matter if it is good or evil, as long as it can kill people." The short saber from before was put into his sleeve, or more accurately on his arm. Chu Xiao originally had a weapon shop, so he specially asked the people in the weapon shop to make a thin short saber, and the scabbard was tied to his forearm. In this way, even if Chu Xiao wore close combat clothes, others would not be able to see that there was a short saber hidden in his arm. Now, after practicing the blood saber scripture, Chu Xiao's saber had also been replaced by a narrow goose feather saber. Ma Kuo had exchanged a few moves with Chu Xiao, but Chu Xiao's evil blood saber technique had left a deep impression on him. Each of Ma Kuo's moves was extremely ruthless. The more he defended, the more aggressive Chu Xiao became. In less than 20 moves, Chu Xiao had left several wounds on Ma Kuo's body. If they really fought, it would not be difficult for Chu Xiao to kill him. In fact, what really shocked Ma Kuo was that Chu Xiao's strength had improved so quickly. He remembered the first time he met Chu Xiao, he could only injure the 3rd bandit, Lian Laosan. It had only been 2 months, and even Ma Kuo was no match for him. It was really terrifying. At this moment, Gao Bei carefully pushed the door open and said, "Child, the 4th young master has been carried back. He has been disabled. Lin Qian and the other managers of the caravan are also dead." He had once followed Chu Xiao to Shangmang Mountain, so he naturally knew who did all this. Chu Xiao put the saber back into the scabbard, and a faint smile appeared on his face. He said, "My father must be very sad now, right? Let's go and have a look." You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.